Good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Finance Subcommittee relative to a motion that was referred over actually by myself and Council Conway, Councilor Noon, regarding the city's annual action plan. Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Chairman Elliott?
Here.
Councilor Conway?
Here.
Councilor Noon?
Here.
3 present.
Okay, thank you. I understand we're running a couple of minutes late here. I know there'll be a lot of questions. I understand there's a presentation by Planning Development, so thank you for doing that. Moving forward next year, perhaps we'll have this in advance of the submission. I know there is some time commitment to get this into the Department of Housing and Urban Development, but we appreciate you coming to answer questions. Relative, for the folks at home, this is the annual budget of Community Development Block Grant funds, home funds, that we receive as an entitlement community from HUD. Every year we have to submit an annual action plan, and that's what this is. So without any further ado, Mr. Samaras, you're going to go right into it? Okay.
DPD, and Craig Thomas, the Deputy Director of DPD. Today we're going to go over the annual action plan, just basic, so talk about basics of the annual action plan and talk about a couple of programs specific, the Downtown Venture Fund and the Sign and Facade Program. So each year, just a little background as far as the process with the grants. Each year we release an RFP for our CDBG, ESG programs. Our home program is on a yearly basis. It's a rolling application process. But we begin this process typically for each fiscal year in December prior to the fiscal year. And we go through a process where we have a it's a public process where we have 3 public hearings, and each public hearing is, once the application is released, we have our first public hearing where it's a technical assistance program meeting where any applicants can come to us and talk to us about any questions they have about the application. Our second public hearing, after the applications have been submitted, is a public process where all the applicants will speak to the Citizen Advisory Committee, which is a 7 to 9 member volunteer committee of Lowell residents in the city, where they'll score and review all the public service applications that come in. And during this second public hearing, each program will speak 2 to 3 minutes in regards to their program and talk about some of the highlights of their program. And it gives the Citizens Advisory Committee a chance to review and ask any questions they may have.
Sure. Can you tell me, maybe we could just have sort of interaction if there's no objection rather than wait for question. How many applicants did we receive this year?
For the
applications just for, public service as well as...
Yeah, I get the exact number right here. We received 31 public service grant applications, and we received 16 non-public service grant applications, and we received, bear with me, 11 ESG applications.
Can you explain ESG just for
Yep.
members as well as folks watching at home?
Sure. So I'll start with the Community Development Block Grant. This year we received $2.214 million in CDBG funds.
2.214.
214. 062.
How much is that? Is that, I know it seems to creep down every year, but has it stabilized?
I can give you the last 3, the last 3 years. It's been pretty close. Last year we received 2.219, so pretty close. And the year before that, we received 2.063. So
okay.
It's gone up a little bit. It's not as high as it was, say, 10 years ago, but it's been pretty level funded. As for ESG funds, which is the, Community Development Block Grant funds, the non-public grant funds, public service grant funds, more for your park projects, your infrastructure projects. Public service grants, which is 15%, up to 15% of the cap. You can use up to 15% of the funds awarded for the public service cap. And those are more your programs like an after-school program, Boys and Girls Club, something like that.
Right.
ESG funds, we don't receive a lot of ESG funds.
Could you just, what's that acronym?
Yeah, I'm just going to get into it. That's Emergency Solutions Grant. And that's for your homelessness assistance. And this year, as we get into it, you'll see that HUD has given us a lot more in funding. But typically each year we receive about, each fiscal year, this year we received $189,283 in ESG funds.
For ESG?
Yeah. Okay. And just to get into the numbers a little bit, not to get too deep in the weeds, for CDBG funds, 20% of those funds are used for administrative costs each year. And for the Emergency Solutions Grants, 7.5% of the funds are awarded towards the, are used for the admin cost, and it's for staff cost. So I'm just going to sort of go back. So this year, as far as, we also received in 2020 CARES Act funding, which in April, we received the funds in 2 buckets. It was sort of an emergency award. We received a bucket, in the first bucket we received $1.2 $1.25 million in CDBG funds, emergency CDBG funds, in April of 2020, and $632,000 in ESG funds in April of 2020. In our second bucket of funds for 2020, we received, it was about September, we received $1.3 million in CDBG funds and approximately $2.6 million in ESG funds, which is quite a bit considered what we receive about $180,000 each year. So that's, I sort of went off a little bit of a tangent when we start talking about numbers, but...
No, that's fine. Can we go back to that, Mr. Smaris?
Yes.
So, in addition to the annual entitlement fund, the CARES Act provided block grant funding.
Yep.
The CARES Act funded additional block grant. Not that we need it tonight, but could we get a report on where that money or how that money was spent?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean...
COVID-related?
It's all COVID-related. A lot of it, if you go to the next slide,
Oh, okay.
A lot of the priorities went to economic development. We allocated $500,000 for small businesses. A lot of it went to a lot of emergency housing, shelter assistance, outreach, and food programs. Food program was a big need. Obviously with COVID, you couldn't go inside the locations. There was a lot of need for organizations providing food services to their clients during 2020.
Okay. It'd be good to get this after, too, just for our own edification. What you do, cite the priorities. For me, it's good to visualize what exactly these grants were for ESG as well as CDBG awards.
Okay.
Did any of these awards go to nonprofit organizations or construction projects, or?
Yes. A lot of, basically, when we do release our RFP, we go through an RFP process. We do release it to our network. We publicly release it through the paper, our website, and our email blast. And typically, we get a lot of the local organizations. And this year, we get a couple new ones each year, but basically it's a lot of your nonprofits that handle the funds.
So of the 31, and maybe I should just say you finished your presentation and you have a lot of answers, but I mean, we did a pretty good job for this year with block grants. Of the 31 applicants, we funded 21, right?
Right. So just to go back as far as what we've done in the last couple of years, last year with our new 5-year consolidated plan for the public service grants, prior to last fiscal year, we used to award $5,000 to $10,000 grants. Per the recommendation of HUD, we increased the grant allotment to each organization between $15,000 and $20,000. Because HUD feels that the grants go a lot further, more money can do a lot more, and this money typically is meant for, it's not meant to be spent year after year, but it's a good startup for starting new programs and stuff like that. So in FY 2020, we allocated 56 grants, and with the changes that we've made over the last 2 years, we've allocated between CDBG and ESG, grant number totals have gone down to 32 and 33 grants, but those are larger grants. Organizations can do a lot more with those funds. That's, and it's also the home program, which focuses on housing rehab and first-time home buyer program. Do you guys have any questions about the numbers? Sorry if I just want to...
No, I just think it'd be good, I'm sure we'll get a motion later, just to get a list of those grants, those individuals that received, the recipients that had those grants, just so we know what organizations that we're helping.
Sure.
That's all.
Okay.
Nope.
Oh. I'm sorry, do you have any more questions about the funds?
I'm sorry, Council Mercia does.
Oh.
Thank you, Chris, but I don't have a question to you, but I do to the chair. I wish there was a way we could notify anyone that came to make a presentation before any subcommittee, any city council as a whole, whatever they're showing us on this screen, that we have it in person as well, because this is very interesting, but I'll never remember it because by the time you leave and it's off the screen, I forgot about it.
Okay.
But if I have it in front of me, that'd be good. And I don't mean just you. You're not the only one that does that. Everybody that comes up there gives a beautiful presentation, and we have nothing to remember.
Yeah.
Especially me. I need every help I can get to remember. Thank you.
Well, no, I think it's a point well taken. I agree, and perhaps we'll bring that in as a recommendation to the city manager, the subcommittee, when presentations are made, that there's a hard copy. Because then we do have it, and we will go home and, most of us will go home and read it. And I think that's, that's important, so we'll bring that in.
Okay, now just moving on, one of the programs that we would like to fund this year is the Downtown Venture Fund, which is a program we funded in the past. So that program originally was launched in 2000 and to support new businesses in the Lowell Central Business District of downtown. Many restaurants and new retailers are considered high risk by commercial lenders. The program is a joint venture between the Lowell Development and Financial Corporation and the City of Lowell. The city reviews initial applications, and the LDFC makes and services the loans. The City of Lowell seeded the program in 2000 with $300,000 in CDBG funds that leveraged an additional $525,000 from the LDFC. Direct investment in its member banks and credit unions. Over time, the Downtown Venture Fund has secured the following total funding: $960,000 in public funds and $1.75 million in private funds. By the numbers, the program started in 2000 with, since 2000, it's been 49 loans, and since 2015, 15 loans with 8 businesses still open and 2 are coming soon. At the request of the city in 2018, the program expanded its boundaries. If you can see the map, it's a little, it expanded outside strictly the downtown area to expand opportunity. So the new venture fund, the new CDBG funding will be used for technical assistance to support investments in downtown properties and businesses. Examples of assistance could include construction, management for restaurant build-out, and design services for retail spaces. These services are not currently available and will provide as grants to avoid additional debt for entrepreneurs. No LDFC administrative costs will be paid with this funding. To get into the sign and facade program, this program provides commercial property owners and businesses with financial support and design assistance for the renovation of commercial building facades. Any applicant must meet HUD low-income criteria, and the grants provide up to 80% of the project cost, up to $2,000 per storefront, and with the 20%, the businesses have a little buy-in into it. Eligible improvements purchases under this program: signage, awnings, lighting, exterior painting, new windows, doors, and exterior landscaping, among others. Since 2015, 27 sign and facade grants have been given out, totaling over $62,000. And currently, there are 3 new projects under review. This is sort of the map of the area where we've given out those grants. And it's the census tract eligible areas. And any grant, the reason why it's capped at 2,000, any grant over 2,000 is subject to Davis-Bacon and prevailing wages. And with a small project, costs can go up quite a bit with the Davis-Bacon rules.
Thank you,
Councilor
Mr.
Mercer.
Chair. Is this facade sign program only for businesses? Like it wouldn't be for nonprofits that it's opening up and putting a signage?
It's used for businesses, storefront businesses. It's not used.
But not nonprofit?
We have not used it for any nonprofits. I don't feel we have. Yeah.
Is it-
Yeah. We haven't, I don't have the numbers exactly who's received it, but I don't think it could be eligible for a nonprofit.
I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, that there's any restriction on it. I mean, it is,
The reason I say that is because the Bridge Club of Greater Lowell just had the Vogue put forth a beautiful sign. They're gonna have a grand opening of that, the Bridge Club of Greater Lowell, 33 East Merrimack Street. They have a beautiful sign.
Okay.
I don't know what we're about to pay for it, but it's beautiful, and
Okay.
I thought, that's a sign, that's a facade. I wonder if they could get some help, well, that money would go to the students at the Voc to further their,
I would say if they're eligible income-wise, I think it could be okay. I just
Okay.
just don't know the exact details. I
all
have to
right, just,
look into it.
if you
Yeah.
could check that out for
Sure.
me, Chris, thank you.
And so next steps with the sign facade program, there's a plan to, our next steps, to increase funding is also support the city's streetery program, where up to $5,000 would be help with outdoor patio furniture, lighting, and landscaping, which is a need. Staff are exploring opportunities for larger investments to overcome Davis-Bacon costs, burden, and to improve adjacent public rights away. Any questions?
Let's go to the members of the subcommittee. Councilor Conway.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chris. If you take a look at the CDBG, the non-public service, yeah, I just want to ask a few questions about these specific items. It says the city will owe the code enforcement $100,000. Can you explain a little bit more detail what we
Yes,
do with that money?
Yeah, that's city salary cost for staff to inspect locations in the city in eligible city businesses and CDBG eligible areas where they inspect the businesses to make sure they're following all the code enforcement, all code rules within the city.
So it's for salaries? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay. So how many individuals?
It's actually overtime salary, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's overtime?
Yep.
$100,000 of overtime?
Yeah, for CDBG area eligible inspectors. Only CDBG, I don't have the list of the inspectors, but it's for the eligible areas that the inspectors inspect.
Has that money been allotted each year? Has that gone up? Has it gone down?
It's gone up a little bit. I think it's gone, we've been doing this program for a number of years. It's gone up, at one time it was about 70,000. It's gone up to about 100. It's been about 100,000 for the last, I think, 3 years.
About 100,000.
Yeah.
A couple other ones that I just want to get a little bit more information about with the open park plan. That's $500,000. What is that? Can you explain that to the public? Explain it to us what that would mean?
So, actually, Craig, did you want to? Craig would be able to answer that one a little bit better.
Okay.
Hi, Chris. Councilor Conway, Craig Thomas, Deputy Director. There are a few changes each year. We try and make updates and learn from the past. In this case, the $500,000 is set aside for eligible open spaces in the city of Lowell. In the past, all public parks and open spaces have been eligible in the city. Unfortunately, over time, a few of the areas in the suburban districts, HUD has deemed ineligible, but the vast majority of the green spaces in the city are still eligible. So sometimes in the past, you'd see a list of lots of different parks with small dollars, $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. But for mechanical and technical reasons about the way we have to go through the HUD process, it's a lot harder to do that than to put a large block that we will use for open space improvements and investments up front in a bucket that we can draw from. So this is a bucket for eligible open space and park improvements. This can support all of the projects that we have funded in other ways, including Hovey Park, including the Acre. We've talked about Clemente Field. There's lots of parks that can draw from this money over time as the need arises, as the investment is a priority for this council and for the city administration, and to match other grants that we get. But it's simply a change mechanically from a long list to one big bucket to draw from.
Okay, so any green areas, this is the funds, these are the funds that we tap. Is
Correct.
that correct?
Yep.
Okay. The ED Assistance Fund, $200,000. What, can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so this is, I can get into it, but Christine can talk in a little more detail, but generally speaking, it's the money we use for the small business retention and relocation loans. Outside of COVID, when we're working with businesses to attract them and to relocate them, this is the pool that we draw from. And this is a one-time investment that we can draw from for several years, which is the same for the Downtown Venture Fund and the Sign and Facade program. So the four big things we've talked about so far, Downtown Venture, Sign and Facade, ED assistance, and open space, these are meant to fund several years' worth of programs.
Okay. And just two other quick questions here. Individual homelessness, $47,147, community teamwork. Can you elaborate a little bit on that one, please?
Community teamwork. So this is, yeah, thank you. So over the course of the pandemic, everything in homelessness has changed. We have a lot of CARES Act money we put towards that, but in the process, it's become clear that, and many of us have known this, that some of what we're doing just wasn't working, and that there's a real need for innovative solutions. So we are still spending CARES Act money and will be for some of that work, but there's also new programs and new partnerships that have emerged. So CTI is starting to work in the individual homelessness field where they didn't before. I think that might surprise some people. Folks think that CTI has been working in homelessness for a long time, and they have, but principally for families. So where in the past, the shelter on Middlesex was really the only individual homelessness resource that existed, throughout the course of the pandemic, partnership and work to try and come up with solutions has led to some new ideas and initiatives, and this is a part of that.
So this is the first year that we're talking about community teamwork, investing monies into individual homelessness. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
That's, okay. And one last one here. The home housing rehab, there's $511,000. It looks like 500. Could you elaborate on this one? This will be my last one. I'll ask you.
Yep. No, that's okay. This might be a better one for Chris, but I'll say very briefly, this is a revolving fund we, again, put dollars into every year, every few years, which is for critical repairs for folks who don't have the means themselves. So we, through an application process, take in applications to vet for compliance with other codes, and then we make certain kinds of investments for roofs, for boilers, for water heaters, to make sure homes are livable so that people can stay in their homes. And then we put some form of lien on the property that folks do not have to pay on, and that has no interest, but documents our investment in the property when that's sold or refinanced.
And what type of criteria would you use for that? Is there a limit? I mean, is there a maximum amount of money that they would make that be eligible for something like this?
Yeah, so it has to be a little fluid because we try and take each circumstance as they come, but typically we try not to spend, more than $75,000, $100,000 per property. But it's really about, we put out a call over time and take rolling applications, and then if folks meet our eligibility criteria, then we process and proceed with the investment and the improvement.
Now, 511 is a little bit of an odd number. Is this the type of number that is every year, or has it been going up at all or down?
That I have to get back to you on, Counselor. I don't know. I do know that we fund each and every year the first-time homebuyer program when we can, as well as some of the other set-asides we're required to fund. For what's called a community housing development organization, we're required to set aside funds. And there's a very small number of organizations that can tap into that money for some of their programs and projects.
I thank you for your assistance on
Of course.
on these questions. Thank you.
Yep.
Also, Councilor Conway?
Yes.
Councilor Nun?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I have a few follow-up to Councilor Conway question. Maybe Mr. Thomas can, come back to the podium. With regard to CTI and homelessness, the partnership that we have with the CTI, is that in partnership with also our homelessness coordinator with the city?
Yes, the homelessness coordinator maintains constant contact with TI.
All right. The $500,000 to the open space and public space, public park. Who determined where in the city that we spend that money on?
Well, it's determined by need, and actually Craig might be able to elaborate on the projects that we have aimed for this year. Yep, sorry, yep.
Thank you, Councilor Noon. All things, it's a combination of what's happening that are in the pipeline, projects that have been set up, grant funds we've allocated, and construction that has begun or is anticipated to begin, council priorities, projects that are brought up through motion or through other means that are added as a part of our open space investment plan, and in general, a part of our future planning, looking at the available grants and some of the deferred maintenance that we identified in the now 7-year open space recreation plan. So that looks at the assets for open space across the community, what the age of the facility is, if there are play structures or others, and then tries to order an investment list. It's not perfect, but the purpose of that typically 5-year plan, it's been a 7-year plan, the last one, which Christine helped write, was one of the lead authors, was really to try and help a community like Lowell and across the Commonwealth prioritize these investments. We do it because that helps us for our planning as a best practice. It also provides access to certain state grants that we utilize all the time.
Would it be possible to get a list of, potential open space and or public park that we're going to spend this money on, as we request earlier about the list of recipients that receiving some of the grant that the city through DPD provide to those recipients?
Absolutely. We can provide the current and near-term construction projects in the parks, as well as the implementation plan from the open space and recreation plan.
There's a lot of good work DPD have done, or the city have done too, for homelessness as well as small businesses. And so the question is, how do we best reach those who would benefit from this such of offering or service? Do we know, besides post this on websites or send it to some nonprofit? How do we best reach those who would benefit from this, including the sign and facade and so on? Because it's not just downtown, but also in the neighborhood storefronts as well. So how do we best reach out to them and saying that this kind of services out there, this is the criteria where one can apply and receive that service?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think Christine would be the best position to talk about the outreach that's happened and will continue to happen for economic development programs, which I think is a model for what we want to do for a lot of our other programs.
Thanks, Craig. So we learned a lot over the pandemic that the best way to reach businesses is to knock on their front door. We've partnered with the CMAA and with the Entrepreneurship Center, so we make sure that all of our applications are in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Khmer. We have paper, and we actually have an iPad, so we can help people fill it out in real time. So we find that direct outreach. So for this, especially for the sign and facade and some of the programs that we're asking to be funded, we will continue that outreach. We've also found, our website and social media is great, but we've also found that videos explaining what the programs are and what the process is in the various languages also helpful, because we can share it with our partners that help us. It's a small team of 3, but it helps us amplify with all of our partners what resources are available.
I think what you did in downtown with small businesses, the program, the eatery program extended throughout the summers, the summers, and if we can get something like that, I know you did something at Captain John, which is look beautiful out there. We can duplicate it elsewhere in the outskirts of the city. That will encourage them to use the open space or outdoor will be great. So thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other, let the record reflect that we're also joined by Councilor Chow, Councilor Drinkwater as well. Members, any questions regarding the annual action plan? No? Okay. So I'll just continue a little bit. Councilor Conway had asked about, I just want to go to the home funds a little bit, if that's okay. First-time home buyer, 300,000. Where does that money go? How does that go? How does that go out the door?
Okay, it's on a rolling process, excuse me. And first-time home buyers can qualify for a loan up to $10,000, and it's a deferred loan.
I can't, okay, thank you.
All right, I've got used to
I
that.
mean, you can wear it if you want, but it's.
No, sorry, I
you can't.
apologize. First-time home buyers, it's a rolling application process, and first-time home buyers can get up to $10,000.
Is that managed through the city, right here?
Yes, that's managed by a housing manager
Oh, okay,
in DPD.
okay, good.
Okay.
And could you continue? I'm sorry to interrupt.
I'm sorry.
What's the criteria?
Yeah, it's got income-eligible residents in the city of Lowell, and the grants, loans up to $10,000. And so, say if the house is sold 10 years down the road, that loan will come back to the city as program income.
Okay.
So that's,
So they're loans.
Yep.
Because I had filed a motion on this, and I thought I got a response from Craig saying that, because I wanted to see if we could reignite the Two for Lowell. Because I happen to think that was a good program, that you had homeowners that were purchasing two properties, but they had to live there to ensure that they just weren't absentee landlords. Because I crisscross this town and I see a lot of 2 families, 3 families. Clearly, the homeowners don't live there, because if they did, they wouldn't live in the conditions that some of these homes are kept in. And that kind of was another reason why I had motions about apartment inspection. People are paying big dollar. The rent burden that we're talking about, at the very least, the standard of housing or the living conditions could be significantly more. So just back to the Two for Lowell program, Craig, can you describe where that money, I thought it was home funds that was used, that's being managed by is it the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership that's doing that? Or there's so many programs, I just want to try to get them straight in my head.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a lot. So to get into the weeds just a little bit, this is money that comes to the city. We are financially responsible for it. Periodically, we issue a solicitation for folks to help us with the first-time homebuyer program, and that the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership, a third-party nonprofit, has won that several rounds in a row. So they provide counseling, recruitment, and intake review for the individuals who apply to the program. The individuals apply and then participate in training courses with the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership to make sure they understand about property maintenance, about ownership, about setting aside money for investments over time. And then once they're through and have graduated, they have access to the loans that Chris was mentioning that are recorded with essentially 0 interest that can be paid back when the property is sold or transferred. And those are for 1 and 2 family properties. So this is when we were talking about Two for Lowell. The Two for Lowell program we felt was incorporated and perhaps enhanced by what's happening with the first-time homebuyer program now.
Okay, how much do they charge us? What's of the 300,000, what is the admin fee?
Each loan, technically, from our perspective, is $15,000. So the homeowners have a maximum of, again, say roughly $10,000, but technically it's $11,800. And for each loan, $3,200 goes to the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership. That includes all of the intake, vetting, and then approval process for them. We did once run this internally, and we find this to be very much to the city's benefit from a cost perspective, and frankly, from an ability to move quickly as a nonprofit to work with home buyers. They've done, it's been a strong partnership over time, and that's reflected by the MVHP continuing to win the contract with the city over years to administer these funds, to help us expend these funds.
Okay, I think that's it's a significant administrative fee. So can we just find out, can we find out how many loans have gone out in the last 5 years?
Yep.
Under this particular program? I think that'd be helpful.
Yep,
I'd
absolutely.
like to know that. I don't know if we need these in the form of a motion or just bring it in as a recommendation.
That'd be good.
Okay, motion by Council Conway, second by Council Noon, to request a report in the last 5 years of first-time home buyer, number of loans and costs associated with that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The opposed, that motion carries. I think we touched on some of the other organizations. I think we do a good job, given the limited limited amount of funding we have for public service. Folks should try to, if you want to go online and look at this throughout the city to see how we distribute. There's many good organizations in here that are funded. I know that during the diversity, inclusion, equity discussion in the city, one of the issues was how does block grant money benefit in some way? I think there were a number of motions, or at least I know that I wanted to take a look at it. How does this address, issues that we talked about in the last number of months? I mean, it's federal funding, and I think that we should use it to support it. And I know that's maybe a question for another meeting, but I think it'd be important to look at these programs and say, and many of them are, well, they're all very good, but how do they directly affect, and how do we improve, the issues that we talked about, not to get into too specifics. The anchor dance troupe, and well, there's 21 of them. So I don't know if you can answer that, or you want to come back with a response on, is there a way that we can better target to address some of the concerns that have been raised in the future, or?
Yeah, so I think that I can provide some answer now, and the timing of this is very good. We hope that as we work through these questions, that this can be brought back for approval with the council, in that the sooner we can get the funding list to HUD, the sooner we have access to the funds, and the less money that these nonprofits have to put out themselves before we can support the programs. Relative to DEI, there's a lot that is a part of the advocacy platform, a lot that's sought through the movement and some of the associated movements. I think fundamentally, though, part of what is sought is about providing more for those who have less, and doing a better job of supporting our formerly and continued marginalized communities. That's fundamental to the eligibility of HUD funds. It has to be spent for eligible activities, things like jobs and access to jobs for low and moderate income folks. It has to be spent in the neighborhoods that are, by their census numbers, the numbers about renters and income more than anything else, that are places that have seen disinvestment, that have been perhaps overlooked for whatever reason. Those are the target and priority areas for federal funds. We take very seriously the need and our obligation to meet the eligibility criteria, and that's a part of our review for each and every application that comes in. So while it doesn't distinctly have some of the DEI framework in it, I think there's a lot of crossover from some of the historic marginalization that's the focus for some of those efforts and for these federal funds. We talk about eligible locations and programs. I can also say that we every year try and find new ways to do what we do better, quicker, and more efficient. In particular, this year, we're looking at an update to the timeline and the way we put out the call for applications and projects, as Councilor Noon was asking about earlier, and then how we can provide feedback to make sure some of the newest organizations that are trying to work on DEI concerns, which are new to emerge, could potentially be funded. So that's a focus for us this year, and we'd be happy to bring forward information in the coming weeks as we start to solidify those plans about what we're doing and why that aligns with some of the concerns that have come out and the goals as stated by the council for meeting some of those requests. Good.
I agree. I think your statement is quite fitting that, the essence of these programs, block grant, ESG, home, to provide more to those who have less, and specifically to target neighborhoods, and I think we've been very successful. Just travel throughout the city. Do we have work to do? Absolutely, and this continues to do that. So that's good to know. I did notice on the public service, which is another reason why I asked for that information. Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership does have a specific line item for $15,000, specifically for home buyer training. So should that fund these grants, or maybe you can explain that in the report that's forthcoming rather than, spend too much more time on that. I'd like to turn it over. Let the record reflect that Councilor Samaras has also joined us. Any questions, Councilor Samaras, on this? Okay. This is helpful to me. I think as we, this is not it's tax dollars, it's federal dollars, but it funds many, many programs in the city and many other aspects of economic development that we put pieces together. One of the last things, senior center lease, when are we done with that? Is it coming soon? It was a great project, I support it wholeheartedly, but it seems like we've been paying this lease for a long time, and it's $375,000. It was worth every nickel to do it this way, because if we didn't, come up with this idea, Council Mercier's crowning jewel, if we didn't, then that senior center wouldn't be here. But are we coming close to the 20-year? It was a 20-year note.
Yes, 20 years in the next few years, yes. So
And that-
2023 is, 2023 is what Chris has said to me.
2023?
Yes.
Okay, then we're gonna have some type of celebration with Council Mercier on that. That's good, because that frees up $375,000, and I think it was a win-win. It satisfied a huge need for our senior population, and it was also a development right in the heart of an acre, clearly an area that needed some significant investment, so all good stuff. So code enforcement, Mrs. Maris spoke about this, but this is, I think the 100,000 is under block grant non-public service. Is this for any relocation, or is this is in fact to fund that position in code enforcement?
No, I'm sorry, to clarify that is for targeted code enforcement in eligible areas. So when you see some of the neighborhood walks, some of the after-hours calls, we get in specific concerns outside the typical time for staff in eligible areas, this is funded to try and go above and beyond to be able to make improvements.
Okay.
And we can-
I understand the need, particularly at nights and in the neighborhoods and the walks to SWAT teams, but this has been funded for a long time, and I presumed it was just kind of it wasn't temporary. Code enforcement clearly we need it, but it's not working. It's not working, and I think we need to relook at perhaps what we're doing, what we're not doing, but that's a conversation another time. Councilor Conway, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay, I thought you did. We only have 10 minutes left, so if there's, we spoke about the sign and facade. I appreciate that. That's good information. I think that should probably be ineligible, whether it's for the sign on the building or not, because it is facade. Of course, the issue, I think, as was mentioned, was if it's over a certain amount, it has to go to Davis-Bacon, which is prevailing wages, right? Is it over 5?
Yeah, so it's over 2,000 goes to Davis-Bacon.
Over 2?
Yeah, and it's not just the wages. Davis-Bacon has a lot of reporting and monitoring. It's just hard for some folks to comply with, which is why in the slide we talked about larger investments. Communities tend to take 2 different strategies, like what we do for smaller investments, $1,500, $2,000, or $20,000, $25,000 to overcome those additional costs that come with our money, come with federal money. And so we've been trying to decide which way we would like to go with this funding. So we've been considering some of the larger investments potentially, but typically smaller. We were debating this. We don't get this question often, but we do think nonprofits would be eligible if they're in the area. Unfortunately, if the sign is already made for the Bridge Club, we might not be able to work on the sign, but for the rest of the building, there's a large facade I know down there. We're happy to talk to the folks in there doing great work about what's possible. So we'd love to.
Well, maybe it's not complete yet. Could I just ask one thing if there's no other questions? Can we go back to the slide presentation? Kind of speaks to Council Mercies. It'd be good to flip back, because I had some, just on the downtown venture fund.
Okay.
It's good information.
So just stop me when we get to the portion
Yep, the
that
next
you're
one.
asking about. So we have
What's the next one?
2000, the introduction of the joint venture. The funding's been secured.
So this is, can we go back to that one, and then I'll follow up on this slide. So, since 2000, we've committed 300 in block grant funds, leveraged an additional 525, presumably from a, LDFC. How many, so total public fund is 560, 960, excuse me, private funds leverage. Can we find out what organizations, what well, it's not just restaurants, right, but primarily restaurants in the downtown area benefited from these funds? I just really would like to know.
Yeah, just what,
I don't expect you to have those answers now, but, you know, we're talking about $2.5 million that LDFC and, you know, and federal funds have been committed to support the downtown ventures. And we have a lot of empty storefronts, so I'd just like to know where they go, where that money went, how are the organizations doing, you know, that type of stuff.
Sure, so we've given out, I believe, 48 to date. We have about 8 active, current businesses that are open. We have another 8 that utilize the program that are still open but are no longer participating in the program because they've paid off the loan. And then we have significant businesses that have paid off the loan but are just closed in downtown. So we do have about 16 active businesses that are open that have utilized this funding
Okay.
source.
I'd like to continue this conversation because it's an awful lot of money that we're targeted. I mean, we're putting $150,000 again. And I'm not suggesting that we don't, continue to provide some support. We have to get businesses downtown. But if we've given out 49, we've got essentially 16 open. I'm concerned what's working, what's not working. I understand COVID. But we're reaching out, and I think we have to, and we do a good job to entice businesses here. But there seems to be a kind of a high number of businesses that we're supporting and then fail, and then it's money gone.
Yep, we share in that concern, and actually one of the things that is changing in the program, and as a credit to Craig, is we're actually building in technical assistance with this program, with the Downtown Venture Fund. So it was really illuminating to me in the Economic Development Office how unprepared and unorganized a lot of businesses were. So as COVID happened, and all these, it was great, there was funds everywhere, but because it was federal dollars, it required a lot of, I'll say underwriting, a lot of tax returns, documents, payroll, receipts, and it was obvious that not all of our businesses are resilient and set up for success. And so one of the things that we're doing with the Downtown Venture Fund is to ensure success is that the LDFC will actually contract with technical service, whether it's marketing, whether it's retail, whether it's point of sale system, and these funds will not be used for that, but just to help businesses stay open and be successful. We do have a lot of supports both at the city and at the Entrepreneurship Center that can fill some of those gaps, but because these businesses have active loans with the LDFC, they have to be in contact with them, and obviously through the LDFC there's less onerous paperwork than, say, the Entrepreneurship Center or even the city would require.
So the 150 that's in this annual plan is a transfer to the Lowell plan, the LDFC rather? We just give them the money and then they go through the process of...
So we would give the $150,000 to the LDFC. The banks who make up the LDFC also contribute to the fund. The Economic Development Office is when there's a business that's interested in opening in Lowell, we are the first pass-through. DPD reviews their business plan. Sometimes we refer them to the Entrepreneurship Center for sort of a business 101 to help build a business plan. And we review their application. We try to make a guess on whether or not we think they'll be successful, if it's an actual use we want to see in our downtown, and then we refer them to the LDFC to actually make the loan. It tends to be riskier because obviously if these businesses could get a traditional commercial loan, they wouldn't have to come to us. So we are taking a risk. We are taking a risk,
No,
but we want to see, a vibrant business.
No, point well taken, I understand. It's a good point. They are a little bit more risky, otherwise a conventional loan, but I don't think the track record, as I see it, the data that's presented is, I'd hoped that it was going to be a little better. We understand some businesses come in for a variety of reasons, even pre-COVID. We'd seen some empty storefronts, but we'll take this to another conversation at Economic Development. I think this is helpful to discuss. We're at the end of our meeting time. This is good. I think you provide a lot of answers to me and my colleagues on what this funding is for, how is it administrated, and so thank you. I appreciate it, and If there is no objection, I would like to refer this Downtown Venture Fund. I'm not sure we can refer this, maybe it has to be the full council, I don't know, but I think it'd be good to refer the Downtown Venture Fund to the Economic Development Subcommittee and have the Economic Development Office come in, the LDFC or the low plan to get a good or more of an explanation as to how it works, what's working, what's not working, how we're gonna change it. So there's a little bit more security for this program.
Sure. We are on a timeline for submitting this to HUD, so do you want to do that prior to the council voting on it, or do you want to just have more
No,
programs?
let me be clear. We'll bring in a recommendation tonight that this,
Okay.
that this come forward, and we support it. There's a lot of good work that goes into it. This was merely informational from my perspective, but moving forward,
Yep.
I would like to get a better handle on exactly the performance of the Downtown Venture Fund and, what the future is post-COVID. If anybody knows the challenges of businesses before and during and after, it's you. So I think that maybe we have a chance to either reinvent or see what's working and not working, and whether it's controls or reducing risk a little bit more. I think that I feel that the ratio should be a little bit better than what it has been, so.
Sure, we look forward to the conversation.
Okay, good. Anything further on that? Okay. We'll bring that in as a recommendation, if there's no objection, that the Economic Development Subcommittee meet, just have a discussion, but we can bring this in as a recommendation to support the annual action plan as presented.
That's fine, yep.
Motion by
Motion,
Councilor,
yep.
motion by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Conway. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, that motion carries. I'm sorry, there's other.
No, I just want to say thank you, but we just, at the council meeting tonight, you have to suspend the rules to bring this up.
Yeah, I think it's either on the agenda for the 22nd, or we can suspend it. We're going to bring in this report. It was already presented, Mr. Clerk. I don't think we need, can we suspend? Can we suspend and bring it in?
It's going to come out through the subcommittee, so I would just suspend the rules, just take a second reading on it and take a vote on it tonight. I have the vote,
it was
I have the vote
already-
in the package.
Yeah, it was already advertised. It was always advertised that we did hold a public hearing. We just sent this out for informational, so we'll bring it back. Okay, sounds good, Mr. Clerk. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Motion by Council Conway, seconded by Council Noon, to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The opposed? That motion carries. This meeting stands adjourned. Thank you very much for providing the information, and if we can get that report, that would be very helpful. Thank you.